Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Verse 44, but I say to you, love your enemy, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who despitefully use you and persecute you. There's not a person in here that has not had somebody like that in their life before. That hated you, persecuted you. Is there anybody that is in here that never had one like that? That covers everybody, doesn't it? And sometimes we don't even know why. Isn't that true? All right, verse 45. That you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good. Isn't that true? Isn't the evil people that don't know God, that might be out there in this neighborhood or this world, they got the same weather we got, don't they? They're living just like us. They have all of the same things like that. The sun rises on the just, on the evil and the good, and sends rain on just and on the unjust. And verse 46, and if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? But if you greet your brother only, what do you do more than others? Do not even the tax collectors do so? Therefore, you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. Now, that's a lot of information. I'm going to be pulling out most of these scriptures in here and using them this week and next week to really point out some things, because he's saying, hey, don't run away from the bad. If the bad demand, if the bad, all of this is going on, lend yourself to them, in other words. Does that sound strange? I want to give you personal examples today of some things that have happened in my life. Now, the key to living with a smile is a Christ-centered life. If I go out here on the street and I say, meet somebody, and I say, are you really happy? Oh yeah, I'm happy. Says, you got Christ in your life? Oh no, I don't believe in all that stuff. If you follow that person around, you're never going to find a person who does not know Christ that has a really beautiful life. They might surround themselves in all kinds of things. They may be wealthy. They may can buy 5 motorcycles instead of the 2 like I got, and both of them need work on, or whatever. Well, that just reminded me, I need work on. Got a motorcycle mechanic over here. I didn't even think about that. Now, the key to living with a smile is a Christ-centered life. The key to living a Christian-centered life is, first of all, emptying yourself out of your own self-life. Do you remember what we were like before we knew Christ? Was there a big change? Anybody that can't tell me there wasn't a change, then I'm here to tell you you're not saved. Because there is a change. If you know Christ, there's a change in your life. Anybody that says that's not so, they're just lying to themselves and to the world. That's it. Even God cannot fill that which is already full. In other words, if we're so full of ourselves and we don't want to turn ourselves loose and let God come in, God's a gentleman. You don't demand and you don't push his way in. Remember what it says? I stand at the door and I knock. What's he knocking for? He's letting us know, but we have to let him in. Isn't that true? You sitting out back this morning, they've got a door out there, and it's on a short frame, and it's just a regular door frame and a door with a handle on it. And she says, "That's a funny looking door over there." I said, "You don't know what that is?" She says, "No." I said, "Well, they've used it here before. Yes, I stand at the door and knock. Christ on one side, the person that needs Christ on the other side. Says, I stand at the door and knock. To anyone who will let me in, I'll come in and what? Abode or be with them." That's the way it is. Even God cannot fill that which is already full. In other words, if we're full of ourselves and that's what we want, then that's what we get. So, the Christ-filled life is a self-emptied life. In other words, when we're willing to give up our ways for His way. And it depends on whether you was really a dumb knucklehead like me that was so full of myself that I wasn't going to give place to nobody or nothing. Then he had to wait all them years patiently. But He's got patience. He's the one that started time. He is time. So we can waste all the time we want and be stubborn. But He's not going to get excited about it. He's just going to wait for us to give up. The Christ-filled life is a self-emptied life. So many of us are full of self. As the wise man said, a man wrapped up in himself makes a very small package. There's really nothing great about us, folks, when we get to thinking about it. There's nothing really great about us if we can't correspond to how great our God is. And all the greatness that we have is through Him. Now, some people can say, well, I'm good at this, I'm good at that. I make $1 million a year. Well, that doesn't make you the beautiful person that we're talking about here. You've got to have God. It's got to be Him. Because you can have all the money, you can have all the leisure and pleasure and all the toys and everything else. You know what, what's the thing? I forgot what the percentage of people that are bankrupt that wins the lotto. Within the first 3 years, nearly half of them or something like that are in financial ruin. They have to declare bankruptcy. And a lot of them have to do it the very first year. The first payment comes, they go out and overload their stuff and everything and lose it all before the next payment's given to them. Because they don't have sense enough to control something like that. That doesn't make them wonderful people. In fact, it can make them greedy. They got statistics on how many of them are divorced and what time frames and everything to win in something like the lotto. I mean, nothing, money and all this and what we desire physically in things and stuff like that doesn't make who we are. If we put too much emphasis in all that stuff, then we become less of what God created us to be. Can we see that? I want you to think with me now on this principle, the principle of living selfless lives, joyful lives, Christ-filled lives, the principle of the second mile. And remember this, it's the second mile that brings the smile. There are 3 things I would like to tell you about the second mile this Sunday and next. And I pray God the Holy Spirit will not only write them down in your notes, but write them on your heart. Number 1, the second mile is the mastery mile. What does the word mastery mean? It means mastering something. Mastery. All right, listen to this. Number 1, the second mile is the mastery mile. Have you got that? It is the mastery mile. Verses 41. Now, if you got your, I didn't put it in the printout, so you're going to have to open your Bible if you want to see individually. Did I put it in there? Is it verse 41?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. I usually do it, but I can't remember all the stuff that I do and I don't over the days. When Jesus said, if anyone will compel you to go with him a mile, go with him 2 miles. What's he talking about? Well, in Jesus' day, the Romans had a practice. They learned this practice from the Persians about 6 centuries before that. Now, if we think of Israel, it's being occupied by the Romans. They have conquered virtually the entire world. And 6 centuries prior to that, they captured Persia and they took over one of their things, because what the Romans did when they defeated a country, they took it over. They stayed there. They made those people do what they wanted to. Those people become subject under them. And one of the things that they did to keep people in their place and to help them to understand just who they were and who was in charge was the principle of the Roman mile. And in this day, a Roman soldier who had a backpack of anything that Roman soldier was carrying, he had the full authority by law in any land that they conquered and occupied, was that soldier could say, Vinny, come over here. I'm tired, I don't want to tote that thing anymore. You tote it. You tote it. You carry it 1 mile. That was the law. When they got to the end of that mile, he said, Jackie, get over here. You. Yeah, the woman with the gray hair. Get over here. Pick that thing up and tote it for me. And you had to do that. It was going to be really bad for you if you tried to refuse, and it could be even deadly to you. But that was the law. The young, able-bodied Jewish man or a boy, he could say to him, you carry this pack, or whatever it was. And by law, that Jewish boy had to pick up that Roman soldier's pack, his burden, and carry it for 1 mile. They knew this. So all of the Jewish men and Gentile men too, they were subject to it too. It wasn't just the Jews. They would measure 1 mile from their house. They would measure from 1 mile from the field that they worked in all the time. And they'd mark it off. 1 mile that way down the road, and 1 mile that way down the road. So if that Roman person ever come by, they knew exactly where that mile was, because they resented it. They hated it. So they had it measured out exactly to 1 mile. And when they got there with that load that they was toting for that Roman person, they would just dump it. They hated it. They resented it. It showed them that they were conquered, that they were being exalted over by another authority. Now, can you imagine in today's society if I went out there on the street and said, hey, you, get over here and do this? What would I get? I might have to exercise my running legs or something. Or today, in today's society, they're just liable to pull out a gun and shoot at you across the street. So you can't go around demanding much in this thing. They're shooting people in cars because somebody pulled over. I'm just stupid. It's getting stupid as stupid does more and more every day. But the sad part about it is, every bit of it says in the last days that it'll be like that. Written down thousands of years ago to be justified by the actual actions of today and today's side. Isn't that something? When that boy or man got to that point, to what the law had commanded him to do, he had done what was required. It brought incredible resentment from the Jews. But Not only were they living as conquered people, not only were the Romans in charge, but now they're humiliated. Can you imagine these? When Jesus is preaching, he says, now, if somebody compels you to go with him a mile, what does it say? Go with him too. You are not going to believe what going the second mile relieves in you. The sermon I'm preaching today and next week, I guarantee you it will change your life if you learn it. Go with him a mile. Go with him 2 miles, friend. You never want to sleep when Jesus was preaching. When Jesus speaks, it's gold to our lives. I mean, it's precious. It's wonderful. Every word he ever spoke has a reason to be spoken, and the reason is to bless us if we do what it says. Does he expect us to carry for those Gentile dogs? This is what the Jews are saying. Those Gentile dogs to do double duty, to go the second mile. That's exactly what Jesus was saying. What he's saying is we need to do more than the legalist, those who do what is required and not one bit more. The problems in our world today, isn't it, I don't want to do anything more than what I have to? I mean, a long time ago, people would come over to help you if they knew you was hurt. They'd feed you. There wasn't welfare. There wasn't anything like that. People took care of people because they loved them and because it was the right thing to do. Is that what happens today? No. Now then, they confiscate our money in the government and pay people to go do what other people don't do a lot of anymore. Everybody in here can remember going and blessing somebody they knew needed help. They knew was desperate. They knew was very sick, unable to take care of themselves or something. But the legalist, that's the one that's only going to do what it takes to get by. How about where you worked? Was the guy working next to you? Was he goofing off all the time and you having to do his work too? And couldn't care less about you and even laugh about it. Well, you're stupid. You're doing it.
And then you get fired.
Isn't that the way it is? It really is. In verse 20, Jesus said, "For I say unto you, except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven." What's Jesus saying here? In other words, these Pharisees and these scribes, they're legalists. They're doing it down to just what has to be done and not a penny shot, nothing more. Jesus saying, hey, you're not going to make it if you live like that. These were the ones that was trying to convict him and crucify him and everything else because of what he was saying was the truth, and the truth was setting the people free. And they control the truth. They control the people. They was telling them lies. They was exercising their right over these people. They was saying, look at me. Look at what I do. You do like I am. Give me your stuff. I'll take care of it for you. You shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven if you're like these people. And there's churches like that. There's churches that are so legalistic. They're not listening to what Jesus is saying. They don't even know what Jesus is saying. They are saying, well, you better do this or you're going to hell. They're not trying to tell you what Jesus wants you to know. They're not telling you, they're not trying to get you to teach what's going to set them free. They're teaching what will hold them in bondage. The scribes and the Pharisees did exactly what they were required to do, not one jot, not one tittle more. Jesus said even when they pay tithes of mint, anise, and cumin. That is, they're counting the little mint leaves. Is everybody supposed to pay tithes to the Lord? Absolutely. Well, they said, look at me, I'm paying more than everybody. Yeah, because they was taking the other people's money and they had more than everybody. But they was counting it out, right down to the piece. October the 29th, 1984 is when I got saved. I was already paying tithes before I got saved. I have never just paid tithes. I have always paid more. Because if you read in the scripture, more is required on our part. Because we love him. We give more. I've always paid more. That 10% has never been in my name. I don't now and never have. Just paid the minimum, what most Christian people talk about, 10%. Because I am blessed. And it brings me blessings. But these legalistic people, they were saying, oh, I'm holier than thou, listen to me. Do as I do. It's a good thing we don't do as they do. That is, they're counting those little mint leaves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's yours, Lord. I've done my duty. That is it. What is the principle of the second mile? What is the smile mile? What will put a smile on your face? It is to do more than is required. Now, Jesus is saying is that any pagan can go 1 mile. He has to anyway. The law said that the person had to go the mile. Anybody can do that. Look, if you will, in verse 46 and 47. For if you love them which love you, what reward have you? Don't even the Republicans or the wicked do that? If they love them? Do you understand that? For if you love them which love you, what reward have you? Do not even the Republicans the same? You see, that's the first mile. In other words, loving somebody that loves you back. But how about going out and loving somebody on the street over here that's in dire need, desperation, needs help? It's costing you to love that person. The other one was just love for love. But to go out and do what God is requiring of all of us to do is to love those that even when they're unlovable. How many people in here actually love somebody that you might just classify as being virtually unlovable, no matter what you do? Everybody's known somebody like that, haven't they? I mean, literally, it's hard to be around them. And no matter how hard you try to win them over, to show them that you care about them and everything, they're right there to just slap you in the face with some, take their tongue and just beat you up. And the head goes up and down. Yeah, that's the way it is. So loving your mama, that's not hard for people to do. Not near as hard as just loving somebody out there on the street. I have loved people in the service of the Lord since 1984 that would laugh at me, would ridicule me, threaten me, all kinds of things. And you would be surprised how many of them eventually, because of the smile mile, the extra mile, the extra going after, worked on those people to the point to where they stopped being the way they were. For if you love them which love you, what reward have you? Do not even the Republicans the same? You see, that's the first mile. Just to love those that love you. And if you salute your brethren only, what is it? You're friendly to people that you know and love. What do ye more than others? You're only gone a mile. Do not even the Republicans do the same? Now what Jesus is saying is that we who are children of God are different. We're not legalists. We're not lost. But we are filled with another principle, which is the principle of the smile mile, the second mile. You see, if life is lived really on three levels, now this sounds really harsh, but I want you to understand these are the three principal ways that everybody on this earth reacts to God, reacts to the way that they live. Listen to this. First of all, those in the hellish level. Number one, the hellish level. The hellish level, and a lot of people in this world live on the hellish level. That is to return evil for good. And there are people like that who return evil for good. That's the hellish level. That's number one. Now, how about this? They just got 2 or 3 guys over on the north side, right in y'all's backyard. They killed the cab driver over there. Called him up, got him over there, and then executed him. Is that the hellish level? Giving evil? The man come way over there, risking his life, trying to make a living, trying to do something good for those people. And what did they do? Execute him for what he had in his pockets. Look at all the misery that's going on in our world every day. I saw last night they had something on there about somebody getting shot in this area, and they had 68 physical robberies in that general little area in the last month. 68. Is that living hellishly? That's number one. Returning evil for good, that's number one. Number two, the human level. The very best you could hope for without the new birth is to turn good for good and evil for evil. That's the human level. Now see, the non-Christian still will abide by this. You do good to me, I'll do good to you. You do bad to me, I'll get even with you. I'll get you. Is that the right way to be? I lived most of my life that way. If you messed up, you paid a price. You paid a price. But that's the way most of the world operates now. Then we have the third level, the heavenly level, the godly level, is to return good for evil. That's what we're talking about today. In spite of what somebody else is doing, you're going to do the right thing.
Amen.
And you're not going to do it just to the point of the law. You're going to go beyond that. And your rewards are going to be peace, love, joy, happiness. The third level, heavenly level, is to return good for evil. And when you return good for evil for evil, that's the first mile. When you return good for evil and evil for evil, that's the first mile. Return good for evil, that's the second mile. 1 out of 3 is the right way. 1 out of 3 lifts you up towards God, closer to God, above what the rest of the world was living. Into a higher realm. Isn't that where you want to be? Don't you want to be lifted up above the misery and all the rest of the stuff? See, that's what those other two groups of people are getting. They're getting in life the misery and everything because there's no God in them. They have not allowed God. They have not allowed that door in the backyard that we talked about a while ago that had the handle on it. God knocked, but they wouldn't open the door. They're the ones that give evil for evil. They're the ones that gave evil for good. It's us. And only us raised up above that way of life. Think about it. He's the one that said, I am now in charge. I'm not doing what you tell me I must do. I am now doing what I want to do. I am no longer the slave. I am the mastery right now. Now this is talking about the person that's going the extra mile and all. No longer is he the slave. When the Roman soldier come by and said, take this and let's go a mile. He was a slave to that law. He was a slave to the Romans. He belonged to them. He was ordered by them, even unto death, to do their law. He finished that first mile. That was ordered. But they couldn't order him to do it again. Another soldier could come along and do it, or another Roman could come along and do it, but that order ended at that mile. Wherever that mile was marked, that's where it ended. I am no longer the slave because I am the mastery right now. I am not under control. Now the devil wants to keep you, I mean under self-control. The devil wants to keep you under his control. And when you finally say, I am not the devil's slave, I am in charge of my own life now. In other words, stop doing just what you have to do and do what blesses God, because what blesses God is going to bless you. You got the kind of getting the gist of it a little bit? Going the extra mile. I'm not doing what is required. I'm doing more than is required. Then move your ears back because your smile's coming. I'm telling you folks, this works. This works. Number two, the second mile in the charity mile is the charity mile. Now here's the second thing I want you to learn today. Not only is the second mile the mastery mile, but the second mile is the charity mile. You see, you do the first mile out of legalism or order or law. That's why you did the first mile. But the second mile, the one that stopped you from being a slave, was because you did what God required, what God asked of you. Then you're no longer a slave. The devil's getting no glory then. You went beyond him. You stepped into God's way, and you get blessed. You went beyond evil. The second mile is the charity mile. You see, you do the first mile out of legalism or demand or law. You do the second mile out of love. And it is love that brings joy. Now the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the scribes, they were very careful to do the first mile. These were the idiots that kept trying to trick Jesus and tried to put him to death and try to get charges against him and everything else. They was trying to cook the books on him all the time because he was making them look really bad, and the people were starting to listen to what Jesus was saying, and they could see the real reality and the justness and the righteousness and the goodness of what Jesus was saying. They had to shut this thing down because they was fixing to lose their control over all these people. Now the Pharisees, Sadducees, and scribes, they were very careful to do the first mile. I'm talking about is Bible legalism, not only carrying a Roman backpack, but in biblical legalism. They did that because they were self-righteous jerks. They were skimming, they was taking the cream that God had for his people and taking it for themselves. And saying, look at me, I'm better than you. Kneel to me. Praise me. Self-righteous jerks. In these Pharisees, the milk of human kindness had curdled. They had religion, but they didn't have reality. They didn't have life. They didn't have God in them. It was all a sham, all fake. Excuse me just a moment. Now, Jesus not only preached in glittering generalities, but Jesus preached often awesome specificity. For example, not only did Jesus say, go the second mile, but he gave illustrations of how they could go the second mile that went far beyond carrying a soldier's backpack. For example, you go the second mile when your dignity is degraded. How many people's had this happen to them? How many people have accosted you because you're a Christian and tried to degrade you or to get better in line at work, tell falsehoods about you, degrade you, pull you down, make you look bad? Verse 38, ye have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you that ye resist not evil. Now that sounds odd. Resist not evil. In other words, let me say it again because it sounds really weird. Resist not evil. For whosoever shall smite thee on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. That is, go the second mile. The first mile is revenge. The second mile is to give no place to the devil, no place to evil. Now let me say that right away. Jesus is not talking pacifism. Jesus is not talking pacifist. Jesus is not saying that we ought never to defend ourselves. That's not what he's talking about. If you think that what he's talking about here, you're going to be in awful trouble in this wicked world in which we live. I'll tell you why. Jesus here is not talking about the lamb defending the lion's right to eat it, or defend a wasp right to sting you, or to defeat someone's right to act lawlessly. What Jesus here is talking about is when you're insulted, when somebody has come and has degraded your dignity. Notice what he says. Jackie, you stand up here for a minute. Just stand and face the group over here. Gosh, I forgot your legs were bothering you. Maybe I should have called somebody else. Everybody look at Mr. Jackie here. Now, I'm not going to hit you hard, so don't get excited here. Notice what he says. If somebody strikes you on your right cheek, now this is talking about if somebody strikes you on the cheek, turn and give them the other cheek. But I want you to look at something. Which one is your right cheek, Jackie? Most people are right-handed, right? How could I strike him? How you going to do that? Now, if you go to the old deals of when they used to what is it? Were the two of them duel? What would they do then? They would degenerate their thoughts of them and everything by giving them the backhand. You can sit down now. See, I just heard you did it.
Yeah, backhand do it, though.
Most people in here have been backhanded at least one time in their life. A lot of people before they even got grown, mom and daddy did it. Yeah. If someone strikes you on your right cheek, now notice what he said, your right cheek. You know which one that is. All right, now, if the normal person is right-handed, well, if I was going to strike him, where would I normally strike him? I'd strike him on his left cheek. That's just normal to hit somebody. Most people in a fight, what's their strongest arm? And especially if they don't know how to fight properly, they're going to take that strongest arm and put it right out there and get the stew beat out of them because they're not setting nothing up. They ain't doing it right. They're going with their strength and nothing else. But anyway, they're going to put that right hand out there. You're not going to try to discourage another man through strength by hitting him with your left when you have something stronger to hit him with. You know, that's the thought behind it for the average person. To strike him on his right cheek is to give him what? You may see that. I'm not going to hit you. Strike him on the right cheek is to give him the back of my hand. It's an insult. It's degrading. It's insulting, degrading, taken away from that person. To slap a person like that. You're good for nothing, you low-down person. And what our Lord is teaching here is that when somebody insults you, somebody degrades you, we're to go the second mile. And that's exactly what Paul's taught. Before I read you this, I want to tell you that I have used this over and over and over in my own life. Many, many times. I used to tell other people when they'd come and they'd start telling me how bad they hated somebody or something like that, and I says, well, I said, you can't go over there and beat that person up, or you can't go do this and this and this. Here's an answer right here. In Romans 12:17 and following, he says, recompense to no man evil for evil. In other words, don't give evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, for as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, revenge not yourself, but rather give place to wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine. God's saying all vengeance is mine. He don't give you the right over vengeance of anything. Vengeance is mine. I will repay, saith the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hungry, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing, thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, overcome evil with good. I have told people to go and pray for those people because I have had numerous, and I ain't talking about a handful, 2 handfuls. I'm probably not even talking about 100 times. I'm probably talking about in excess of hundreds of times because I'm the one that people run to They want to do right, but they don't know how, because all their life was what they have given. It was evil back for evil. But God's calling them a little bit, and they got enough sense to ask a question now. So-and-so did this to me. I just feel like going over there and just pounding him out. I said, you want to do something worse than that? Start praying for him. Because it says, does everybody believe what God says? That's the clue right there. God says that I'll heap coals on his head. In other words, he's going to have no peace. He's going to be in the heat. God's going to keep the pressure on him. I have seen it over and over. I'm fixing to give you an example of something that happened to me. That is the way it is. Has anybody ever done what I'm talking about? Pray for that person. I used to sit around and figure out how I could kill him. Yeah, really. Really. I mean, figure out ways to hurt them. I was that far down. They wasn't just going to get evil for evil. They was going to get mortal evil to the end. And then I found out after I got saved, pray for those that despitefully use you, for those that do harm to you. Now, I've exercised that fairly well in my life since I've become a Christian. I have messed up a few times. I housed a drunk at my house. I caught him going into the woods on Christmas Eve, was it? I was at a biker bar. It's closed down now, but there's woods all around it right there. And he was heading in the woods. I said, where are you going? He was stumbling around, couldn't even walk and everything. He said, I'm going out here to kill myself. I put the jerk on my bike and carried him home. Subjected my wife to him and everything else for months and months and months. Got him a job, all this sort of stuff. Got him somewhat free of the booze and all that sort of stuff. In fact, even sent him back to his family. They were very rich people up in New York. He went up there and just started terrorizing them. They called me up and said, will you please take him back? We're scared of him. I had to go to the airport and pick him up. He OD'd in my truck picking him up. He started foaming at the mouth. Eyes rolled back in his head. He closed his head and just foaming in my back seat of my truck. And when he went limp, his legs went under the front seat and we couldn't get him out. We called the ambulance. We watched the ambulance being stopped by the train. He actually came back to before the train, the big old freight train went by. I kept him for months again. I noticed that he wasn't doing exactly right. Got him a job, he was making money. He actually had a bank account and all. He was actually putting money in savings. But all of a sudden things started looking not quite so good. And I got a phone call from a Minute Market. Apparently he gave him the number. He was down across the bridge at Julian Creek down there in was that St. Johns County? At a Minute Market not too far on the other side of the bridge. He says, you're going to have to come get him, or he says, I got to call the cops. So I went down there to get him. He got in my truck. He said, you know, I can whip your butt, don't you? And he wasn't using the right word, like I just did. And he started doing all this sort of stuff at me in the front seat of my truck. And it was all I could do. I mean, all I could do. I put up with it, and I put up with it, and drove the 5 miles back to my house, or whatever it is. Got out of the truck, and here he comes at me. He's bouncing around, jumping, swinging at me. He's swinging at me. I mean, he's throwing punches. I'm just backing up and getting away from him. He says, I'm gonna whip you and I'm gonna whip you good. And he is, he's trying to whip me. Y'all see that? Before I knew it. Bam! If he'd have been sober, I knocked him out. In fact, I thought I knocked him out. I knocked him from where I parked my truck in the front yard all the way up against the fence going to the back yard. And he just laid there, and I thought I'd knocked him out. Got up, started dancing around, but this time he was scared. He was dancing away from me. Well, that one punch, I tore his mouth all to pieces. That was to the bone. I had to carry him inside, clean him up, got all his stuff together. It was supposed to freeze that night. It was cold, it was wintertime. I got all of his stuff, and I said, get everything you got out of this house, but you ain't staying here no more. Put him in the truck, carried him up by 295. I said, you got money. I said, do you want to go to a motel? I'll carry you to the motel. No, I want out right here. Okay. Put him out. Got a call from that minute market that I needed to come get him. I said, no, I ain't. For 3 days, I watched his backpack and everything he owned lay side of the road over there where I put it out. Eventually, I got in touch with him. He was going to kill me. I know where you live. But I showed the man love. I showed the man affection. I showed him that I cared about enough of him to let him come into my house for me to feed him, for me to wash his clothes, and whatever my wife was doing for him, you know, to wash and clean and stuff like that. And I wash clothes and everything. And she's got me trained pretty good. I cook and all that sort of stuff. But I messed up that time. I had done what God was telling me to do, no matter what he did, but I blew it one time. But many times, many times it has worked. Many times around the biker bars and everything that it's worked. I'll give you a little example of it. There was a guy out there at General Motors where I worked and retired from. He was fairly short. He was probably 3-4 inches shorter than I am. He was a black guy, very stocky. This guy was tremendously strong, even though he was short and all that sort of stuff. Physically, he was an animal. This little guy, you looked at him and he looked little till you checked out his arms and his back and all that sort of stuff. But this guy was bench pressing 350 pounds. It was just an astronomical amount of weight for such a small person. And then there was another guy out there. He played for a long time before the football team come here. What's the football team they tried to get going here many years ago? I forgot the name of it. Huh? No, this was a football game, and this has been 15, 20 years ago. Huh? I can't speak louder. Yeah, it was a semi-pro ball group. Anyway, this guy that worked out there, he was one of their players at one time. And he was a monster. I watched the cops come get him one day, and he went across the street there at Bay Meadows, going across US 1.
No, you don't need it.
Going across US 1 with about 4 cops. He's dragging them. They're all got him around the waist and everything, and he's just walking like they ain't even there. He's swinging around and actually slinging cops off of it. I mean, he's a monster. He's actually dead now. They got so many of him, they went to get him one time, and They got so many of them until they choked him to death. He died by being choked to death by the cops. He was just an animal. But this big old guy loved me. He was the first time that I ever had a run-in with Muslim stuff. He became a Muslim. That's when he started going nuts and everything. And I was telling him about Jesus and all. I was saved and on fire. And telling him about Jesus. And he says, there ain't no GD white man ever died on the cross for me. But he respected me. The man actually loved me. This young guy one day, I don't know what was going on. I don't know whether in fact, I think he was, they hadn't arrested him yet. He was fixing to be arrested or something. But anyway, he was out of sorts. Because he liked me too. We got along. We were friends. He walked up to me and yeah in my face or something like that. And I said something. And he took his open hand and slapped me a couple of times. And boy, that drew the crowd, the whole place out there. Hey, Chet, this guy's fixing to get it. They knew that was going to be fun to watch. So the whole crowd showed up. Well, the big guy, he stepped in and told the other guy, he says, don't do that. And for a minute, I took the big guy and I started to push him out of the way because I had all I could take. I was fixing to get him. And God got hold of me. And I just let go. I let go. I actually stood there and started praying for him. I had my hand up on the guy, trying to get him out of the way so we could go ahead and fight. And I stopped, and I started praying for him. Now that's a huge warehouse. And my job out there was to take the problems when people had things that they didn't know what to do with and all. They would call me over the intercom. And I had a electric cart and all, because that place is huge. That place was several acres inside. And I'd run around there. But anyway, I started praying for the man. The next morning, I had a habit, because I had already gotten saved and all, I had a habit of going back in the back of the warehouse and praying. And when I got to work in the morning and all, praying for people, praying for this, that, and the other. So when I got there that morning, I went back, and it was close to the very place where it happened. And I heard him yell at me. The one that had hit me with his hands a couple of times, trying to provoke a fight. He didn't do it in public like he did it the first time. But he come up there with tears just rolling down his face, apologizing, begging me to forgive him for what he did. Because of that one scripture that I just read to you. Because I started heaping coals on his head because I cared about him like God cared about him. Now, if you knew this man, you would know how dramatic what I'm saying is. Because I have watched it work over and over and over again in my life. And I have passed it on to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. Because when people couldn't figure out, they come to Chet for an answer. And I tell them just exactly that. Pray for them. God will heap coals on their heads. I bet you that's the first time that man's ever cried his whole life, probably, because he was so hard. He was so hard in the world. But that worked. That's a true experience of what could have led to somebody seriously hurt or death or whatever. You want me to tell you how to get rid of an enemy? Make a friend out of him. Make a friend out of him. Jesus is saying, go the second mile. Go the second mile when your dignity is degraded. In other words, don't let somebody insult you into doing something against God. Don't let somebody belittle you. If you're eat up with pride, you got a problem. Because pride goeth before what? A fall. The bigger the pride, the bigger the fall. Has anybody experienced that in here before? Verse 40, if any man sue thee at the law and take away thy coat, give him your cloak also. Now the cloak here is like the overcoat. They use a little bit different language here. If he gets in a lawsuit and he's victorious over you, then you just don't give him simply what the settlement is. In other words, now this is considered in right. In other words, if you're wrong, if you have been sued and the court says that you're wrong, if you are wrong, don't just give the man what the suit was for. Give him extra. Give him more than the settlement. Now, our Lord is not talking about somebody robbing you. We're not talking about if a robber comes to your house and says, let me guide you over here to the safe. He's not talking about that. He's talking here about a legal settlement. In this legal matter, there has been a brother who is adjudicated guilty, and so he has to give his coat. Jesus said that if you've been wrong and you know that you're wrong, don't simply try to rectify that wrong by whatever the law says you must do. Do more than the law says you must do. Go the second mile. That's what Zacchaeus did. Remember Zacchaeus? When Zacchaeus said, if I have wronged any man, Zacchaeus got saved, and he's standing there telling Jesus, he said, if I have wronged any man by false accusations, I restore unto him. He was a tax collector. So you know that he took things from people that probably wasn't right. By false accusations, restore unto him fourfold. This man was saying, hey, if I've wronged anybody, step up. I'll give you 4 times what I wronged you. Not too many people around do that, are they? Now, we're not finished. We've got next week to go. Did anybody hear anything today that reminded them of truth that they could see in their own life? Has anybody seen response by doing what was right? How many times you was blessed? Were the coals put on the person who attacked you? Or did something horrible? Maybe it was spreading lies, maybe it was doing whatever. It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't have to be an actual fist fight or something like that. It can be anything, taking advantage of you in some way, or degrading your you before other people or whatever. Are we seeing that God is ready to help and defend and bless his children in spite of anything and in spite of everything? Do we see that we have the right through his word to gain things from God by doing what God says to do? But when it's talking about the last mile, going extra, doing something extra. How many times have y'all heard me tell you, the more you read this, the more you're going to be blessed? This is knowledge. This is God's knowledge. There is no way that you can take in his knowledge and not be blessed. There is no way, let me repeat that, there is no way that you can get serious about reading this word, about wanting and desiring God's will in your life by reading this word, that your life will not change because this word changes you. In other words, the person that goes the extra mile, not just on Sunday at church, but the person that actually says, wow, God, today's Tuesday. I want to know what you want to show me today. Hey, God, now it's Wednesday. I want to know what you want to show me today. Every day, a blessing comes out of this word. Every day, what did we say a while ago? Hide his word in our heart, that what? That we may be able to bring it forth in a time of need. Stacked up goodness, prepaid cards. Stacked up goodness, prepaid blessings, just waiting for you to accept them.